Something just went very wrong for the Islamic Republic of Iran, and it happened live on camera in front of the entire world. Because what was supposed to be a calm, controlled interview with a spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry turned into a full-blown meltdown the moment real evidence got brought up.
I think we have already won this brutal war.
We hear a lot of experts saying that even if the US were to stop the war tomorrow, stop the bombing, Iran would not stop and has no interest in stopping this war until it establishes or reestablishes deterrence, until it has a guarantee that it won't be attacked again in the future. Is that a fair description of the Iranian government's position?
I think this is based on the past experiences we have had.
Now, here's a twist. This wasn't coming from the United States or Israel. No, this actually came from groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. You know, the same groups that usually don't exactly send Christmas cards to Washington or Tel Aviv. And that's when everything started falling apart. We're talking denial, deflection, contradictions, and at one point, total silence. But here's where it gets even bigger, because this isn't just about one interview. This is about what's happening inside of Iran, what the Iranian security forces have been accused of, what's going on in Tehran, and how this entire situation is now spilling into the global stage, from the Strait of Hormuz to pressure from countries like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, all while the United States, under President Donald Trump, is right in the middle of it.
Destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable.
In other words, what you're about to see is what happens when the narrative collapses in real time. So if you want the truth that the legacy media conveniently tiptoes around, make sure you subscribe. And if by the end of the video, you're sitting there thinking, wow, I did not see that coming, go ahead and hit the like button on your way out. And real quick, if you or someone you know, someone you love is on Medicare, there is free help through Chapter linked in the description down below of this video. Don't sleep on that, guys. All right, so let's break this down. So picture this. A spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry sits down for what's supposed to be a routine interview. Calm, collected, script is ready, right? Probably thinking, yeah, we've done this 100 times. And for the first few seconds, everything looks normal. But then the question hits. Not about diplomacy, not about sanctions, not about the United States under President Donald J. Trump. No, the question goes straight for the throat. What about the massacre of protesters?
This violence was propagated, was even orchestrated by United States and Israel as part of their campaign to defame Iran and to destabilize the system.
Well, let's talk about that. You're saying two things at once, and I think two things can be true at once. It is undeniable that the Israelis were trying to incite protests inside of Iran. The Financial Times has reported on that. The Israelis themselves have said that. So I'm not disputing that outside powers were trying to foment unrest and incite protests. But you've also admitted that these protests were legitimate demands against economic problems. Your president said in December these were legitimate demands. And then you crack down on these protesters. Some people say 30 to 40,000 people were killed. That's seen as the higher end. Others say 3,000 to 4,000. I think your own government has admitted that thousands died. How many people were killed in these protests in January, according to you?
I think 30 to 40,000. Some put it 70,000 to match it with the number of Palestinians killed in genocide.
Put aside what your critics say. I'm asking what you think. How many people were killed?
3,170 persons were killed. And I should say that every single life matters for us. 2,400 of them were regarded as martyrs because they were either police officers or the bystanders. But I should believe...
Well, hold on. Your government figures suggest, I think it's 3,117 is what the Iranian government put out, yes. 200 security forces. So who killed all of the other civilians?
As I said, many of them were killed by the gunmen, infiltrated inside the protesters.
How many were killed by your government?
I don't have the figure.
Why not? It's a pretty big issue for Iran. It's been the biggest.
Yes, it is.
So how can you not know how many people your government, your security?
And just like that, you can feel it. The shift the body language tightens, the tone changes, the answers start getting slippery because now we're not talking about talking points anymore. We're talking about what the Iranian security forces have been accused of doing to their own people inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. And here's the thing. He wasn't ready for that question. Not like this, not on live TV, not with the entire world watching. And you can almost hear it in his voice. That moment when someone realizes that this is not going the way that they thought it would. That's where the unraveling begins. Now, here's where it gets brutal because the interviewer doesn't just ask a vague question and move on. Oh no, he comes loaded. He brings receipts. He starts naming names, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and not just casually. He lays it out piece by piece, verified videos, eyewitness accounts, doctors reporting injuries, protesters shot in the head, in the chest, and then he drops the question that you could feel coming. Why should we believe your government over them?
But what about the eyewitness accounts of people being brought into hospitals, heads and faces shot full of pellets by Iranian security forces? Human Rights Watch have documented that. Amnesty International have documented that. Multiple media outfits. You're saying all these eyewitnesses are lying. It's all fake.
I'm not saying all of them are lies. I have to see them. And I'm sure that our authorities are taking care of every report that has been produced implicating our security forces.
Well, you couldn't give me the numbers earlier, so I'm not sure it has been that full an investigation. Before we run out of time, let me ask you about another important issue.
I'm the spokesman of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That I do not know exactly what I told you the numbers. That I do not know exactly the number of those people who have been killed by others doesn't mean that we don't have addition. You have to talk to the spokesperson of the Ministry of Interior, the security people.
Well, let me ask you about something a foreign ministry spokesman should know about, another human rights claim. You have the US bombing a girls' school, Israel bombing residential buildings and power plants in Iran. Those are war crimes, undeniably. We have said so at Ziteo. What the US and Israel is doing in Iran are war crimes. But Iran is also using cluster munitions against Israel, which are indiscriminate. They cause a lot of civilian casualties. And again, Amnesty International, Human Rights Group, has previously called the use of such munitions a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. Dr. Baghai, how can you condemn the US and Israel for breaking international law if you're doing it too?
How many people have been killed by those so-called cluster ammunitions?
Why are they so-called? Well, are you denying the use of cluster munitions that we've seen in any case, evidence of?
You see.
And you asked me a question, by the way. 3 Palestinian women in the occupied West Bank were killed last week by a direct hit from what the Israeli military say was an Iranian cluster munition missile.
They are saying that.
So who killed the 3 Palestinian women? I mean, the Palestinian Red Crescent is saying that. That is a Palestinian group, not an Israeli group.
What I can tell you that Israelis are professional lawyers.
What about the Palestinian Red Crescent? What about the Palestinian Red Crescent, which says these 3 women were killed by fragmentation from an Iranian missile?
Boom, right? Now, that's not a question. That's clearly a trap because now the spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry has probably only a few options. Admit it, deny it, or deflect it, right? And you can literally watch him try all 3 at the same time. First, he hesitates, he stumbles, and then he tries to reframe. But here's the problem. These aren't accusations coming from political rivals. They are coming from organizations that have built their entire reputation on documenting this exact kind of thing. And suddenly the calm, polished interview, yeah, gone. Now it's pressure. Now it's tension. Now it's slow, uncomfortable realization. He's got nowhere to go. So what does the spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry do when he's cornered? He goes to the oldest play in the book, blame someone else. Suddenly, it's not about evidence anymore. Now it's about the United States. Now it's about Israel. He basically says, look, these videos, these reports, they're being fed by foreign enemies. And you can almost hear the script flipping pages in his head. But here's the problem. The interviewer doesn't let him get away with it. He pushes back immediately. Actually, Israel criticizes these same groups. These aren't U.S. claims. These are independent investigations.
What is your message to Donald Trump today?
I do not have any message to the American authorities, but to American people, I think this is a war of whims. This is not the war of American people against Iranian nation. This is a war that the United States is dragged into by Israel. This is a war that is imposed on the region. Iran has nothing to do with the consequences. The calamity that this war has brought upon the region and on world economy must be the United States must be held accountable for all the consequences. So this is a war of choice by the United States against a civilizational state, against a civilizational nation that was in diplomatic process with the United States to resolve their differences.
And just like that, the whole argument gone, collapsed. Because now the spokesperson is stuck in a contradiction. He's basically trying to discredit organizations that don't even agree with the countries that he's blaming. And you can see it, the moment of panic, the moment where someone realizes that the line isn't working. And instead of calming things down, it only makes things worse. It makes everything worse. Now, hang on, guys. You know someone who still thinks that this stuff never gets exposed? Yeah, send them this video. Let them watch this part right here. Because what happens next, this is where the receipts hit. Now the conversation shifts from claims to specifics. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. The interviewer starts laying out exactly what groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch documented, not vague accusations, details, protesters being shot, not randomly targeted, heads, faces, torsos, security forces positioned on rooftops, on streets, even near public buildings, using weapons loaded with metal pellets. Let that sink in, right? This isn't crowd control. This is precision. And then comes the real pressure point. Doctors, medical reports, people showing up in hospitals with injuries that match exactly what those same reports described. And so now the spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry can't just wave it away, because these aren't theories. These are patterns. They're verified patterns. And you can feel it. The energy in the interview shifts again. It's no longer a debate. Now it's exposure. And this is the moment that the title promises, the moment where receipts change everything. And you know what's really interesting? Moments like this, they all come down to one thing: assumptions getting exposed. People assume everything's fine up until reality hits them in the face. And that doesn't just happen in global politics. It happens in real life too. Assuming your Medicare plan is fine is rather expensive. One viewer thought everything was covered, then get hit with a bill for $480 that she didn't need to pay. That's right, $480 unexpectedly. And if you're being honest, right, that's the kind of surprise nobody wants, right? I mean, this is why Chapter replaces assumptions with facts by actually verifying your Medicare coverage for free. And look, you'd rather know for sure rather than guess, right? And you'd rather catch a problem early than have to pay for it later, right? Exactly. This is why so many people are already calling the phone number on the bottom of your screen right there, 909-563-8279, or they're clicking the link in the description down below to go to askchapter.org/Ron. So this is the moment where everything shifts, because up to now, you could pretty much argue that this is just politics, back and forth, claims and counterclaims, but this here, no, this hits different. The interviewer brings up reports that inside Tehran, doctors are being told something unthinkable: not to treat injured protesters. Read this again, okay? Not to help them, not to save them, but to report them to the Iranian security forces. Now, imagine this. You're hurt, you make it to the hospital, thank God, right? And you think you're safe. You're going to get your medical attention that you need, and instead you're being flagged, tracked, possibly arrested. That's not healthcare, that's control.
One medical professional said a man in his 40s was rushed to the hospital's emergency unit after being shot in the head at close range during a demonstration. When he and others tried to hurry into the room to tend to him, he said the agents blocked their way, pushing some back with their rifles. The man was pronounced dead minutes later, after which agents placed his body in a black body bag, which they transferred along with other bodies into the back of a van and drove off. Doctors say this was not an isolated incident. They reported that in January, plainclothes officers swarmed hospitals in multiple cities, where they often also obstructed care to patients in critical condition. They added that the officers also intimidated staff, snatched protesters, and took away the dead in body bags. Dozens of doctors were also reportedly arrested simply for performing their duties.
And when this gets brought up on live TV, you could pretty much feel the air leave the room, because how do you defend that? How do you explain that away? You can't. This is why this moment hits so hard, because now the audience isn't just hearing about protest, they're seeing what happens after that. And once people see that, they don't regret it. Now, watch how fast the conversation shifts, because when the details get too real, the strategy changes. Numbers, the Iranian government starts throwing out some figures: 2,400 martyrs, 600 gunmen, labels, categories, reframing the story, because if you control the numbers, you control the narrative. Or at least that's the idea. But here's the problem. Those numbers, they don't match what groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are reporting. Not even close. And so now we got two completely different realities. One from the Islamic Republic of Iran and one from the independent investigators. And the gap between them is massive. I mean, you can see what's happening here. This is not clarification. This is damage control, because once the facts start slipping out, the only thing left to do is to try to reshape them. But at this point, the credibility is already cracking. Now, here's the uncomfortable question that nobody wants to ask. Where were these questions before? Because this interview didn't happen in a vacuum. Back in February, the United States under President Donald J. Trump was in negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Big talks, high stakes, nuclear deal discussions, and the entire time, Iranian officials were doing interviews just like this one. Same network, same format, same opportunity, but the questions, they're very different. No deep dives into the protests, no pressure about the killings, no mention of what groups like Amnesty International were reporting, nothing. And now, suddenly, now the questions are showing up. Now the pressure's real. So it really makes you wonder, was this missed? Or was it avoided? Because timing matters. And when the toughest questions only show up after the negotiations have happened, people start connecting the dots. And once they do, trust starts slipping. Now, let's take this even deeper than that, because this is not just about what happened in that interview. This is about what the system itself has become.
Stay the course. Do not throw this crumbling regime a lifeline. Pave the way for the Iranian people to finish the job.
We've had very good negotiations today with Iran, getting a lot of the things that they should have given us a long time ago. We'll see how it works out, but they're very good, moving along very nicely. They've destroyed a lot of additional targets today. The Navy's gone, the Air Force is gone, we know that. But we destroyed many targets today. It was a big day. And we are negotiating with them directly and indirectly.
The Islamic Republic of Iran was built on a very specific idea. Led by Ayatollah Khomeini, the promise was clear. No monarchy, no dictatorship, power would belong to the people. That was the whole point of the revolution. But if you fast forward to today, the critics are saying something very different. They're saying the system now looks less like a republic and more like a closed circle. Power concentrated, voices limited, leadership staying within the same tight group. And when that gets brought up, you can see why it hits a nerve, because it challenges the very foundation of the entire system. Not just what they're doing, but what they claim to be. And when a system starts drifting away from its original purpose, this is when things get unstable. Not overnight, but slowly, then all at once. So now here's how this Islamic Republic of Iran says that its system works. They point to elections. They point to something called the Assembly of Experts. They say, look, the people vote. Sounds good on paper, right? But here's the part they don't emphasize. The Iranian supreme leader has control over who's even allowed to run. Now think about that. You don't choose from anyone. You choose from a pre-approved list. So yes, technically there is voting, but if every option has already been filtered, is that really a choice? You see what I'm saying here? So this is why the answers in this interview felt so rehearsed, because when the system is designed to protect itself, it produces the same voices, the same narratives over and over again. And suddenly that spokesperson from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, he's not just one guy struggling on TV. He's a product of the system itself. And once you see that, you realize this was not just a bad interview. This was the system getting exposed in real time. Now, I want to talk about control, because while all of this is happening, there's something else that's going on inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. People can't even access the internet. Think about that, right? Entire populations offline. No posting, no sharing, no showing the world what's really happening. But here's where it gets almost unbelievable. The same officials who are saying we had to shut it down for security, they're sitting there doing interviews on Zoom, using the internet, talking to global media. So let's go ahead and break that down, shall we? Citizens, no internet. Government, full access. That's not security. That is control. That's narrative control. And when the Iranian foreign government, the Iranian foreign ministry gets asked about it, the answer is predictable. We're under attack. We're protecting our people. But here's the thing. If everything is as controlled and stable as they claim, why shut down the flow of information? Why block the outside world from seeing what's happening inside places like Tehran? Because once people see, they start asking questions. And as we've already seen, these questions are exactly what caused everything to fall apart on that live interview. Now, here's where things take a sharp turn, because this isn't staying inside the Islamic Republic of Iran anymore. Now it's spilling into the region. We're talking about countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and even Oman, a country that isn't even hosting US bases. And yet, they're getting hit. Ports, airports, infrastructure, not military targets, civilian, which raises a serious question. What's the goal here? Because if you're hitting countries that aren't even directly involved, this isn't defense, this is expansion. And the message becomes clear. Spread the pressure, widen the impact, make the region feel it.
Iran ramping up attacks on Israel. Dramatic video showing an Iranian ballistic missile slamming into the city of Dimona in southern Israel. Nearby soon after, a second Iranian direct strike in the city of Arad. Both missiles breaching Israel's high-tech, multi-layered air defenses, and both hitting residential districts. Israeli officials saying more than 120 injured in multiple Iranian strikes in the past 24 hours. And tonight, Pope Leo yet again urging a ceasefire, calling the war scandal to the whole human family.
But here's where it starts to backfire, because instead of scaring these countries into backing off, it's doing the exact opposite. And so now we get to the twist here. And this is where everything flips. The strategy: target global pressure points like the Strait of Hormuz, oil tankers, shipping routes, global supply chains. The idea is simple. If the world feels enough economic pain, they'll pressure the United States under President Donald J. Trump to back off, end the conflict, pull away, but instead the exact opposite happens. Countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and even Kuwait start pushing the US to go harder, not softer, no ceasefire, no pause. They want the threat eliminated. Nuclear capabilities, missiles, drones, proxies, gone. Because from their perspective, a temporary pause isn't peace. It's just a countdown to the next crisis. And just like that, what was supposed to show strength ends up exposing weakness. And when you step back and you look at all of this together, that live TV meltdown, it wasn't just one bad interview. It was a crack, a glimpse, a moment where the narrative couldn't hold anymore. And once people see that, they can't unsee it. So if this gave you a perspective that you're not getting anywhere else, make sure you're subscribed. And if you made it all the way to the end and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, that was worth it, go ahead and hit the like button on your way out. We'll see you next time.